Thank you. Well, yeah, I was trying to think. Do you have like an official title, Deputy Chief of Staff Carlson, for coming to the meeting? Today we're going to have a budget meeting, and we're going to get some information from Deputy Chief of Staff Carlson. We'll have some members kind of come in a little later, but to be respectful of everyone's time, we'll go ahead and get started a little earlier. Well, we'll get started on time today. So I'll let you take it over from here, John.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Appreciate you having me here. I am John Carlson. I work in Mayor Gaylor Baird's office, and one of the jobs that I have is I work with the budget team and the city council team and on things that are budget related. And we're here today as in kind of our modified mid-biennium budget calendar to talk a little bit more about budget outcomes. This is the second of the 5 meetings that are called for in the budget resolution. And as always, we appreciate your time letting us come down and share some of this information to both you and to the public. Again, the 5 meetings are predicated on the 5 outcome areas that are articulated in the city budget that we use. And last week we talked about safe and healthy city. And this week we're going to have some departments present on innovative and operationally excellent city. And again, just for the benefit of those watching at home, again, quoting from the budget book, this outcome, the description of this outcome talks about our commitment to continuous process improvement and innovation, using data technology and smart strategies to increase our operational and fiscal performance. Again, we want to use that data and that technology to engage effectively with residents, to drive our transparency and our excellence within each department, and to make sure that we're able to adapt quickly and creatively to future challenges as we've adapted to the kind of current challenges that we've seen in the last year. And that means making sure that public resources are allocated efficiently, that our city services are accessible to residents. I think our new website update, for example, is an opportunity there. Residents have great customer service, and that we tracked our activity, our outcomes, and the investments that we make on behalf of the public, and that we are a responsible steward of those funds, that we produce financial stability, meet our debt goals, and are able to provide what the community expects us to be able to provide in support of their goals. And clearly all departments work to achieve those goals within their own department and as a team. Today we have 3 departments that are going to talk about what they do in their departments specifically towards those outcomes, although they, like all departments, support all the outcomes. We've got planning department, we've got building and safety, and then we've got finance and information services being a branch of the finance department. And I'd like to kick us off today by inviting Director David Carey up to talk with you about the planning department.
Oh, okay. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you very much for some of your time today. I will be going over some of the information from the planning department's many roles that we play to get a lot of the work done of the city. Very proud of our department. What I'll be talking about is a little bit of our work that we do, how that fits into the budget itself, and then provide some opportunity for you to ask questions if there are any. Our mission is really, I think the word that I would pull out of this mission statement is facilitate. That is a very big part of what we do. Our role is to make sure that we are getting the work done that we are charged with in the city charter. That is to have a comprehensive plan, and then from that to maintain our zoning ordinance, subdivision ordinance, produce a capital improvement program, to have a zoning board of appeals, and a planning commission, and then from that, a lot of the work that we do. So it's not just those things, but it's kind of what builds off of that, and really is meant to make sure that we have a community that is growing to serve the needs of growth in the community, as well as to make sure that our community is the best community that it can be. So in a nutshell, that is what we do. And from that, we basically work at making sure that we are making the needs of the city as well as the county as a whole. Just to point out that we are a county and city department, that we serve both entities and all that in the entire geographical area of Lancaster County. It is important to note that we support 10 boards and commissions throughout our work. So there's a lot of administrative work to be done, and we do that well, and we do it with a lot of interest in making sure that the topics of responsibility and interest that those boards and commissions have are really thoughtful. We provide input to the approval processes that we work through. We want to make sure that we are also being thoughtful about the future. So our comprehensive plan, the active update of that plan that's occurring right now is very important. I want to make sure that we are looking to the future to make sure that we can become the best community that we can be. So looking at the current budget and the outcomes, goals, and performance measures that are in there for the planning department, that's what is showing on the screen at this point. I would note that these outcomes and goals and performance measures highlight strong and resilient city and vibrant city economy and quality of life, which absolutely part of our work works towards those things. We are here for innovative and operational excellent city today for that topic. And so what I like to say is that we are really, we are a part of all these different goals and outcomes. We make sure that we're working with the various different departments to help them meet their goals as well as to serve the needs of the community for growth and redevelopment. So you'll see that on these, I'll point out one that is very important, and that is the turnaround time for our initial review of final plats. That is the one area that the planning department very much can control that. And we want to make sure that that is a 20-day turnaround time, and we have met that 100% of the time this past year. So we continue to do well with that. And we want to continue to look at ways that we can improve on that as well. Another one that I would point out is that our lot supply measurement that we look at, we try to make sure that we have 10 or more years of a lot supply. Last year it actually was at 12 years. It actually is going up this year. We've had a lot more developments approved in the past year. We continue to build, which is a good thing. It's not like the building has gone down. It's just that we definitely have a system set up so that we have a lot of supply built into the system. A very important point that I would like to convey to you today is the level of activity that's happening, both on the building side as well as on the application side that we are receiving coming into the department. There has been a shift in the last 6 years, since 2015 through this past year. Our level of load of applications has gone up by 21% on average over those more recent 6 years compared to going back to 2009 and the previous 6 years. Something that I've been looking at for many years now. We've known this has been happening, and this has remained elevated. Now, the good news is that even during 2020, when we're dealing with obviously the pandemic, and there was a lot of questions back in April and May and whether or not we were going to see a slowdown physically in our development and growth, and that did not happen. That not only did we have a robust building season last year, but our applications actually went up from 2019. So we are still experiencing this elevated level of activity for the planning department. And I would mostly say that it is very good news. It is good news for the city. I say that we are strained at the staffing level. There's a lot of work to do, continuous work. It never really seems to, the flow is not ebbing at all. It is staying at a heightened level. Related to that is the fact that we have continued to grow as a population and physically as a city. So our population is now over 290,000. We're waiting on the formal final number from the 2020 census. We should be getting that, I think, by April of this year. But we know with confidence that it's over 290,000 now. So that is up over 12% over the last decade. Annexations, very consistent with annexations. We basically are growing our city by about 10 square miles every decade, and that goes back very consistently back to like 1970 now. But from 2010 to 2020, we did increase by about 9.5 square miles, an increase of 10.5%. So we are officially a city of 100 square miles. That happened in December. So if you want to pull that out when you're talking to folks, you can say we are a city of 100 square miles now. Within that information, it's important to note that we are up to about 22% annually for our residential new unit construction is actually infill and redevelopment. So that is what the activity we see in the downtown as well as in our existing neighborhoods. So we have a significant amount of redevelopment and infill happening on an annual basis. Pulling information from the budget, we are, this year we are down to 20 FTEs. We were at 21 in the previous budget. That is the historic preservation planner, the Ed Zimmer position that we were able to, we didn't want to, but we were able to remove that position because we have staff currently with us that have a skill set to do that work. And so while we miss Ed, we do have qualified staff to do the work that he was doing. I would note, more historically speaking, that 10 years ago we did have 22 FTEs. And so now we are down 2 full-time equivalent staff people since the time that we have this now elevated and consistent level of activity. So we do have, definitely have moments of stress happening within our department, and it's something that I am talking about and would like to continue that discussion. We do have the experience of having improved our level of service to the populace for our processes. So we went to a fully digital process for our applications, and what that means is that the accessibility of making comment is really opened up to anyone that is able to get online and put a comment in the comment box for a particular item that's being discussed. So that level of activity and input and involvement from the public has really increased, and that's great, and that's a good outcome. That doesn't mean that our staff responsibilities for processing all these comments has gone down. In fact, it has gone up. And so just kind of noting to you as we go into this budget discussion that we are down staff and we are increased every year pretty much in the level of effort and work that we have to do. We will continue to do that work, but it is something that is stressing the staff right now. We also have some ideas for some additional service improvements, but we have to be cautious about those moving forward given the level of work that is already at hand with the lower staff. Also from the current budget, you'll note that under budget 2020-2021, total expenditures actually will be below what it was 2 years ago. So our budget actually has gone down slightly. And we really, we knew we needed to do something with the pandemic concerns last year, and we did our part on that. And just want to make sure that you're noting that as we go into this next budget discussion. I would also note that on the top half of that chart, you'll see that nearly half, or about 48% of our budget is covered by other revenues that come in. So we are a general revenue-driven department. That's the money that we get is how we pay for what we do. But between application fees as well as intergovernmental payments from both the county as a city-county department, and then from the federal government for our transportation planning and for historic preservation, we get almost 50% of our cost is covered from those funding sources. So that's a good news piece to this. That'll continue moving forward. I want to brag a little bit about 2020. As I said earlier, we didn't slow down on our work. We were afraid that might happen. We're really glad that it didn't happen for a lot of different reasons. But what we did, first of all, we completed this 2020 census work effort, and many of you were involved in that, and really appreciate your input and work with that. That was a successful outcome as well. We even before the pandemic began, we had made a decision to really upgrade our capabilities technology-wise in our department. So all of our staff was going to get a new laptop, for example, and upgrade our systems so that we were more secure. We're running on very old systems. Give credit to the IS department for their support and all that. But what we were able to do is we were able to fairly nimbly go to a remote work setting and continue to work that way in a safest manner as possible. So I feel very good about that. And then moving forward, that's going to give us some capabilities as well that we didn't have just 2 years ago. So I feel very good about that. We have proven that we can do that work remotely. We had very good outcomes for our completing the work that was at hand at that heightened level throughout the year. And one example, what's on the screen here is a screenshot of one of our virtual events for the update of the comprehensive plan. We were able to go virtual, and that was it was challenging, but at the same time it worked. And so I feel like we accomplished a lot in that sense. And I know that moving out of the pandemic, that there's going to be this heightened level of expectation that there is some type of virtual experience for all of our work still, so that people don't have to come in person, but they should be able to comment and be involved. And so my expectation is that we will continue that level of effort for our projects moving forward still. Looking forward to this year and then beyond. So this year, one of the big lifts, as you are aware of, is the completion of the 2050 Comprehensive Plan update. So that is ongoing and will be done by the end of this calendar year. We also fully expect, and we are experiencing, that the heightened level of activity is still happening. The first quarter of this fiscal year, we saw basically a replication of what was happening in the previous year. So the activity level is still there. We also want to, now that we have the Affordable Housing Action Plan in place, we're going to be working on and supporting efforts to get more affordable housing accomplished in our community. That would be with a lot of different partnerships and working with different departments as well. The Climate Action Plan, which is now coming forward, and you'll be seeing that soon. That is something that is a focus moving forward for this year and beyond. And then equity in the community. That's a big topic in the update of the comprehensive plan, and you'll be seeing a lot of that information coming forward soon as well. But that is an important piece of how we want our community to be as inclusive and open and equitable as possible for all of our residents. And it would not be a good presentation from a planning director without a map, so I needed to put a map in. So what you'll see here is the draft future growth tier map that has been put together with our update of our comprehensive plan. What you see that is in the salmon or light pink on the left side of the map, you'll see some of those areas that are replicated in purple on the right side. So those purple areas are what's being proposed is opening up more land in the new plan to meet the demands of growth out to 2050. So currently, those areas are kind of identified as that tier 2 dark green, where we're planning to get there, but it's not in the current plan. But those are areas that are identified to meet those demands of growth while still having a pretty high level of infill and redevelopment. So the plan is being put together with a lot of good information. I feel confident in it, and you'll be seeing a lot more information on that this year. It'll be coming forward pretty soon. So with that, I will stop and see if there are any questions, and I appreciate your time.
Do we have any questions for Director Carey?
Of course I do.
I figured.
Yeah. I'll ask my second question first. When you're looking at the salmon areas, and you were talking about lot availability and making sure we had at least 10 years, what do you, can you tell us what you forecast lot availability to be if we bring in the salmon areas into tier 1?
So what this will, the calculation that goes into these areas, the purple areas that we are at this point in a draft form recommending bringing into the actual growth tiers out to 2050, that will allow us, when you account for floodplains and drainage areas and undevelopable land, that will allow us to comfortably maintain at least the 10-year lot supply based on expected densities that would happen out there. So,
Okay.
yeah, so we did make sure that the land area that we're talking about makes sense in that way.
All right, thank you. And then my first question is, tell me what you plan to do in general about equity. I'm thinking right now about when we move to digital, which I agree is very efficient, can be very effective. How are we getting comments from people who don't have easy access in that manner?
What I will say is that we do have a first part of my answer to that is that we are working with an equity subcommittee right now and talking through most of the main topics of the comprehensive plan to kind of get people to react to information and to give us their input on what would work or maybe perhaps what isn't working when it comes to equity in the community. The results of those conversations are going to inform the decision-making of creating the new plan. So we're not quite to the point of saying this is what's going to happen, this is how we're going to do it. What I will say is that in trying to address equity in our community in relation to the comprehensive plan, one way that we've been talking about this, and this is a little bit more of a holistic way of thinking about it, because you certainly could break it down to should our materials be in multiple languages all the time? You know, that's a very valid way of thinking about this. Or on the transportation side of things, how much can we or should we be providing a certain level of service to the community, especially those that are not in a position to always have access to a car. So those are certainly on the table being discussed as well. What we have been talking about, which is a little bit more of a holistic way of thinking about it, is that complete neighborhoods is a topic that's been brought up. And this topic has been in other communities in the recent past as well. And we're learning from some of those communities and how they've addressed this. But when you talk about complete neighborhoods, that's where you can start saying, within a certain distance perhaps of all residents, is there access to healthcare? We've often talked about, and we do talk about, access to a public park or to a school. So, but you start adding all these pieces and parts together, and you can start to see how we do across our community on all these different levels of whether they're just simply daily life activities, or if there are ways to get services to folks, things like that. So that's an area that we're talking about, and I'm actually very excited about that because it's a way for a comprehensive plan to get into this topic better, because it's a little bit, you don't want to keep it so nebulous that it doesn't really say anything. But when you look at neighborhoods, you can start to get into the meat of this topic.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? I had one quick one. You said you may be looking to add an FTE or for the upcoming budget?
Well, I don't think any of those decisions have been made yet. What I'm saying is that we are, and the staff level is stressed.
I know.
So it's more of a, I would say it's the beginning of a conversation about that, but that doesn't mean that that's necessarily going to be proposed in this budget.
Okay.
Okay?
Any other questions?
Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Thanks, David.
I believe we will have Director Chad Blaha come up for Building and Safety at this point.
Sorry.
Hey, it woke us up.
There you go. All right. Well, thanks, Dave, for the introduction, and thank you, council member, for the opportunity to chat a little bit today. High level, I guess, about the beginning of the budget process. Chad Blaha, Director, Building and Safety, and here at Building and Safety, as many of you know, our mission is essentially we intend to ensure that Lincoln's building infrastructure is constructed and maintained in a condition sufficient to provide its residents safe and healthy places to live, work, play, and recuperate. We do this through providing plan review and permit issuance services, inspection services, and complaint investigations across the various codes that we enforce, arson investigations, and bomb squad response. And so with that, we have some indicators that we look at budgetarily here out of the budget book, and we also, not just for the budget purposes, but for planning purposes and looking at how we're doing from a staffing standpoint, use these as well. Most of them have to do with time turnaround for the various services that we look at. And like I said, this comes right out of the budget book, but we added a column here, the 2020-21 actual that we have been working on, so year to date as of now, just to kind of take a look at a couple of these. We are hitting our next day inspections 99% of the time with a goal of 95%. Doing really well with our responding to complaints. Within 2 days, we're getting that at about 95% of the time. And then our goal of getting those responses from those complaints, i.e. if there is a violation, we want to get that notification out to either the landlord or the homeowner, whoever, in a quick turnaround so they can get working on it. We get that out of there about 88% of the time year to date, which is relatively consistent. Our goal is 95%. The one area we don't do great with meeting the goal on a year-to-year basis, really, and it's a pretty high standard to try and achieve, is meeting our commercial plan review first round comments in 10 days or less. Our goal is 96%. As you can see in the history, the 2018 we were at 70%, 1920 we were at 45%, and then this year, year to date, we were at 28%. It doesn't look or sound like a good number. However, the goal is 10 days or less. Our actual average over the course is 15 days. So it is elevated. There's a number of factors that go into that. One is not to belabor the effects that every entity, business entity or otherwise, has had to deal with the COVID situation, but that has had a big impact on our folks who are trying to do their plan reviews and talk residents and customers through the online and via phone application process. There's just a lot going. So that contributed. Another contribution is just general staffing that I'll talk a little bit more here in a little bit. So just wanted to throw that out there so you guys can take a look at where we're headed. And this is kind of related, talks a little about the level of work that we have been asked to do by our customers over the recent couple of years. And this is the chart. As you can see, or this is the table. I got a chart coming up that maybe graphically works a little bit better. But just to point out that 2020 is approaching the same levels of 2017, which was considered a high watermark year in terms of permit activity. So even through the pandemic and all the effects that it had, like David said, people are still building. People are still building stuff, and so we're having to accommodate that. And like I said, here's the chart that shows virtually no decrease in workload related to that. Moving in, that's the workload that we have to do. Here's what we have to do it with. This is we're once again right out of the budget book, our FTE numbers. That's what we were approved for in 2020-21, 56.14. The odd decimals we have. We always add a little bit into our budget for on-call professional technical workers. That's what we use when either we have a high number of vacations. We like to bring people in. We have the luxury of having either former employees that have retired willing to come in and help us out on temporary basis. So we do always budget for that with some FTEs, and that's kind of what that shows. Now this next slide kind of shows kind of a little bit of what Director Carey kind of touched on. 2006 prior to 2017 was considered the high watermark year for permitting activity and business activity for building and safety. And so we do a lot of comparisons there. And so these are the FTEs comparisons between 2006 and 2020. You can look at the different categories, but the total is what really matters. In 2006, we had 63 employees in building and safety, and we did about 51,500 permits of all kinds, plumbing, electrical, mechanical, building, licensed professional licensing activities. And in 2020, we have 54. So we're down 9 employees from that year at the current watermark. A lot of, once again, there's a lot of factors. We have some technology that has improved our efficiency, especially in the administrative employees area, and some maybe in the plan review. Inspectors, there's not much technology can do as far as the need to get out and inspect the physical construction, and so we're still doing more with less, not to be cliche about it, but doing more with less there. And we continually monitor that activity to look at the necessity to add inspectors or other employees, and we will continue to do so as we move into the next year. And as of right now, the activity does not, the permitting activity does not appear to be slowing. This is traditionally a really slow period of time for us, but we are still seeing people coming in at about the same clip as we did for 2020 to start off with. So it's early, but it doesn't appear that folks are slowing down. So like I said, we will continue to look at that and look at adding inspectors as needed. We don't have any plans right now to request it, but that is just something to make everybody aware of that we're looking. And as a reminder, we are fee funded, and so we can show the revenue to support these positions, and so that's usually how we go about that process. And here's the our budget summary directly out of the book from last fiscal year. Not showing a whole lot of changes. We made a significant technology upgrade in our licensed professional system. Went to like Director Carey said again, we went to an all digital process for our licensed professionals to be able to do everything. They can apply for their license, they can renew their license, pay for their licensing on time, and they can even register and certify their CEUs, their required CEUs. It's all tracked within the system, and so there's no printing off of certificates and handing that in that they used to have to do. So that's part of the big jump there. We won't have that big capital outlay for the next budget cycle. Making sure I did everything here. One of the things that I did want to mention in terms of the budget that will likely show up, we're kicking off. You guys are, a number of you are aware of the short-term rental code that we're gonna looking to adopt. We will be the department that's charged with enforcing and regulating those items as they come up. Part of that is we don't want to reinvent anything. There is a system out there in a company that is already part of Granicus, which we are part of. We will be asking to expand on those services. They have a very robust set of services for helping jurisdictions administer those short-term rental licensing programs, and so that will end up showing up in our budget request. We just don't have those specifics yet, but wanted to mention that as we're here. I guess with that, I don't have a whole lot else. So once again, thanks for your time, and I welcome any questions.
Yes, Councilperson Christensen.
Thank you, Chair. Does Building and Safety inspect city properties?
Yes, we do. When there's as an example, if Parks or Recs buildings, they typically get they typically ask for review services for those facilities. I guess what specifically do you have?
I was
in
looking
mind?
at seeing whether we're doing that on a regular basis or.
Do you mean from a maintenance standpoint?
Yeah, just checking
Or-
to see if the buildings are, in condition to be habitable, if they're inhabited. So
There is not. We would certainly, if a department who has a facility that they would like for our folks to look at, we would offer that service.
Okay.
But there is no formal program for that. So
Thank you.
Councilperson Show.
Over here. Chad, let me get the microphone closer. That makes life a lot better. Better? Worse? Better? You talked about the average time between application and the 10 days the target, 15 days the actual average. Have you thought about what you need to bring that average down? And let's stop there. That's my question. You talked about shortage of FTEs, the change in FTEs over the last few years. Are there other things that would help, that we could help you with to get that average down?
I guess I don't know a specific answer to that. I think one thing that my staff would say that has been in the plan review, the long-time plan review staff, they would say that the complexity of the developments has increased significantly over that time period. And so we are also charged with reviewing not only the building codes, but like the zoning codes as they apply to the building permits. And in an effort, which was a good effort, I used to work in the development, but in an effort to make it more flexible for these developers to accommodate their clients, their customers. There's a lot of special permitting, a lot of flexibility built into that process. But what that means for us as building permit reviewers, it means instead of going to one zoning code to review, each development has a fairly customized set of rules applied to it. So it's doing the research, separate research each time. That's just one component. I'd say a bigger component is probably the staffing. We're just a little short. And of course, this year was rough. We had a number of COVID-related absences from those employees, and a maternity-related absence. So the B team was doing some reviews there. But it's just kind of, I don't know that there's a one specific thing that if I could snap my fingers and do, that it
Yeah.
would be quicker, other than, an additional reviewer in a couple different places. And once again, I will have to say that 15-day average still compares pretty well to the industry standard. I was at a conference previously where they had made some changes, and they were ecstatic that their first commercial reviews were getting done in 30 days. So I think
Whoa.
the 10-day goal is a pretty high goal to meet.
Well, I think you answered my question. I appreciate that. I don't think this is the meeting to talk about it, but I'd like to talk about what we can do to help as we enter further into the budget process, allocating funds and resources, how we can help with that.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yes, Councilperson Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chad, thank you for this presentation, and I'm still in the process of learning details, so I'm going to ask a question that may be obvious. You'd mentioned that, in talking about FTE, furthering the conversation that you started with Councilman Shob, you talked about FTE and potential needs, and then you said that we're fee-funded and that you can show the revenue to support additional positions. And I was curious, at what percentage are you fee-funded?
Almost 100%.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you again.
Thank you.
Right. And and then I'd like to thank the commercial developers for paying those fees and everyone else. And, I keep striving for 10 days. That kind of made me shocked when you said that it may be 30 days in other communities they would be happy with. And I know that we wouldn't be happy with 30 days or so. Keep working toward 10.
Yep.
Good job.
Councilperson Christensen.
Okay. One of the observations let's put it this way, complaints that I receive once in a while from people who are doing home renovations or builders who are doing things, and they'll say, well, we get an inspector out to our place and they say, do A, B, and C. And they do it and they come for a follow-up inspection. It's a different inspector, and the different inspector says, well, I would have preferred you do A, B, and D, so go back and do D now and we'll be okay. And people feel like they're caught between two different inspectors. Is there been ever consideration to having a consistency in inspectors saying, okay, once you start with this property, you will do all the work on this property, to avoid that kind of communication with the public?
Consistency is something that, we definitely try to focus on. I would hope that when as things as blatant as what you just described, that gets brought up to at least that chief, whoever their supervisor is, so that they can kind of remedy between that. But it really shouldn't, unless it was something very glaring, and it was more than just personal preference between the two inspectors. It shouldn't happen that much, and I would hope that I get made aware of that when it happens.
The only reason I bring it up is I've heard it quite often,
Okay.
and So what I think I'll do in the future is just pass every one of those observations when I get them on to you.
I would be fine with that, definitely.
Person Rabel.
Thank you. Thanks, Chad, for being here. I have a question for you. I wonder if, you mentioned your benchmark is 2006 in terms of the number of permits that were pushed through. But I don't know if we had the same metrics and standards back in 2006. And I guess the question is, historically, how long would it take your department to process the standard commercial permit? If it's, if we set that high bar of 10 days, but we're really turning it around in 15, what was it like back in 2006? Because I thought you said in addition to the normal inspections, you also had to do all the mechanical, plumbing, and et cetera.
Oh, that's part of it. That's just,
Okay.
that's part of that 50-some thousand permits. That was just a high level number. In terms of what our turnaround time
That was
then.
back then, because it seemed like you had more people back then. Now you have fewer, and technology's helping, and
I
some
don't
of it-
I don't have specifically what the turnaround time was.
'Cause they
back
didn't
then.
track
I
it
could
back
certainly, I could certainly go back. It probably is. I just don't have that in front of me, Jane.
Okay.
I apologize. I don't know how long that 10-day goal was there when I started
Okay.
in 2014. So how long before that they used that as a metric, I do not know.
Well, on behalf of the building community, I've heard that you guys do a great job and that you do turn it around pretty quickly. And so maybe, I guess what I'm saying is that maybe our standard back in 2006 was that 30-day, like other municipalities and communities had, and that they were really thrilled that they got it down to 30 days instead of, could have been 45 days. So from what I hear from the building community is that you are turning it around quickly,
Thank
or
you.
quicker.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Any other at this point? Yes, Councilperson Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Director Blahoff, I just have to ask about the bomb squad response. I'll be the one to ask because I don't. Tell us about that.
They got the cool uniforms and the cool toys.
Oh, lucky to- okay.
Yeah, they're part of they're wrapped into our Bureau of Fire Prevention, which are the fire inspectors, and any call that comes in for a suspicious package or unattended package that LPD or LFR doesn't want to make a call on, which is virtually all of them. Our guys show up. They're certified bomb techs. They go down to FBI facility in Alabama to be trained on their protocol, and they have it's kind of interesting to watch when they're in their gear, but that's what they do, and there's a surprising number of those that happen, and even in a city the size of Lincoln. So a lot of visits to schools. Most all of the packages they're just a bag left there, but there's been a lot of examples where it hasn't been just a bag, and so we take them all seriously.
More in 2020, perhaps, than given the civic unrest than normal. Okay, very good. Good to know. Thank you.
Okay. Director Blaha, I have a couple for you.
Sure.
Commercial, you and I talk a lot about that. Did we ever do permitting a different way a little bit in the past? What I'm asking is, planning department ever gotten involved, since they're the ones that do most of the special use permits or the PUDs, and they pretty much are the ones that bring them through. You're not involved in them until they're actually passed.
If you're talking about, you mean the zoning review for the building?
Zoning
That's an
review.
Excellent question. I don't believe that was done differently in the past. There's definitely been, Dave and I have had a number of conversations about what that might look like.
Okay.
If some of that gets transitioned. I think it's a lot of work. That would be, this year was a little bit lower year for commercial applications. We still had almost 700 of them. So that would be, if it's a certain percentage of those are going to fall within a special permit area. And so, I don't know what that percentage is, but
Right.
let's call it 50%. That's kind of what it feels like anymore. So that would be a significant number of activities that that planning would end up taking over. And I know we had a lot of conversation about that, and then a lot of, I think, along with a lot of other things got put on hold with the pandemic, but I expect that we'll probably be having those conversations again before long.
Yeah, I know. It'd be hard for, well, a person doing the permit review to go back through, 20 years of special use permit amendments on a property, trying to find that one that might have tripped that up if it's a small remodel job on a office building, but they go back through and check them all.
And I did not mean to bring that up to as the sole reason that and it's just one of the
Right.
components that leads to a more complex review. And once again, we're not alone. I mean, we're not the only jurisdiction that has those, so.
A little bit about your budget. You said you're pretty much 100%, you're an enterprise fund basically, right?
Essentially,
Yeah.
special revenue fund is, I think, the term, but yeah.
Okay.
Because we do get a small, normal years, we do get a small bit of about maybe 10% of our budget is a general fund. Some of the fire investigation and bomb squad activity is a general fund activity, and then some of our housing section for the housing complaint investigation program. There's a small chunk of general fund there.
Okay, I got a real stupid question now.
No such
Are
thing.
you city building and safety, or are you Lancaster County / city building and safety?
We are a city department. We
Okay.
are contracted with the county through a interlocal agreement to provide the building permit review and inspection services with the county board. But we are just a city department.
Okay, and I'll have a question on your department for finance then too.
Sure.
I was just wondering, the amount of money that you have in your fund at this point, and where you ended up this year as compared to the previous years, but I think she'll have a 2-year cash rollover for me, or
Oh, okay. I mean, I know our fund balance, if that's what you're asking.
is it about 9, or what is it?
Just shy. Yep.
Just shy of 9 now?
Just shy of 9, yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Hey, what, 9 million?
Yep.
Okay. Which is about a year's operating.
And in our year-to-date revenue, fiscal year-to-date revenue right now is, we are down about $500,000, but that's not, it's a little lower than we normally are, but we're usually down by this time just because we have the slower fall and then a little bit slower winter. Which was interesting because we were way up in terms of numbers of permits, but a lot of those were, folks were stuck at home. Bored and needed something to do, so.
What about LPS? As they bring on the new facilities, do they
They get permits.
get permits? Do they pay for them?
They do, yes.
Okay. And do you do inspections then
Yes.
for them also? What about UNL? You don't do anything? They don't buy permits or?
No, there's been a bill at the legislature for at least the past couple of sessions that has attempted to do that, to bring, let's see, here's a certain category, but UNL is included in the category of state agency-owned buildings that would come into local code enforcement jurisdiction. It's been unsuccessful, and it hasn't been real close.
They don't have to meet city codes, but they have to meet state code.
They have to meet the state building code. Well, the university has its own, I believe the university has its own building code, but I believe it basically mirrors the state building
The
code.
states. Okay. Oh, and we'll have a question for you later. What's the difference between a manufactured home and a mobile home? And we can talk offline.
Did you say for later? Okay.
And moving permits, moving of those facilities, the buildings, the
Okay.
manufactured homes. and
Okay, got it.
Mobile homes.
Yeah,
You
that's
probably
fine.
know what that's about.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead and.
We'll talk about that later.
And with that, I'm going to invite Mr. David Young up to talk about technologies and finance.
got paper handouts for everybody, David.
You
In the
know,
technology.
He's got to go mimeograph those.
I could only hope that we could go back to stone tablets and carving to speed the process up, but I think as you've heard with each one of the previous presenters, we're more and more focused on technology to create efficiencies that allow us to operate with reduced staff. And I think that's a good trend over time. Mr. Chair, members of the council, thank you for having me here today. I have a pretty short presentation, really looking at what is the finance department, what are our goals and objectives, and what is IS doing for you lately, is what I like to talk about. The finance department's mission statement to provide service to city and county residents consistent, reliable, and timely. There are 6 operating divisions of finance. Their values mirror the mission statement. Our goals specifically for an innovative and operationally excellent city for finance are efficient and effective application of public resources, protect the city's interest, and effective application of public resources. You dive into that specifically, how we measure those things. Do we maintain a AAA general bond rating? Are we forecasting general fund revenue within 3.5% of projections, which we are? And do we continue to maintain our awards from the Government Finance Officers Association, the competitive annual finance report, and our popular annual finance report? These are new acronyms to me, and the budget group. We've had the CAFR since 1983. The PAFR, the popular annual finance report, which is a executive summary of the CAFR, making it much easier to read. We received that in 2017 and then the budget award in 2018. Specifically, what are we doing? Both finance and IT are focusing on technology. The implementation of a new centralized payroll group and new centralized payroll system in partnership with the county. You may have heard of it as Oracle's HCM product. Information services reorganization with a focus on security, and the consolidation of the Social Security fund into the general fund. The concept there is to limit the number of funds we have, streamlining paperwork and processes. The challenges we're looking for in 2021, really focusing on using technology to protect the city's interest and increasing public accessibility to our information. Reviewing any future municipal finance changes, over 150 bills this year, specifically focused in that area. Continuing evaluation of our professional organization's best practices. Really, what are we doing? Making sure that we're in alignment with government financial standards. Straight out of the budget book, the last 3 years. In the center column, the FTEs for 2019 and 2020. We went up by 5, which was offset by a reduction in 5 FTEs in other departments. That is the consolidated payroll system. To the right, if you look at account clerk 2 and account clerk 3 in 2019, 2020, that's where you see those 5. They were consolidated from other departments into this budget. IS, same thing, right out of the charts. We have the same number of staff all 3 years. The finance department's operations budget here. If I can direct your attention to the top right corner, Social Security Fund, you will see that is where we consolidated the Social Security Fund into the general fund. The $220,000 that's left in there was rollover cash from this year, which we will be moving in the next fiscal year. So that will depreciate that fund from this sheet. Do you have any questions about the financial statements as far as what has been presented today?
Question, yes, Councilperson Christensen.
Oracle HCM. I mean, this is now your baby that didn't start that way. So tell me about the payroll irregularities that have been going on with Oracle.
2 classifications. Specifically, when we consolidated payroll, certain departments were processing payroll differently from the way it was negotiated in the union contract. So I don't have any specific examples, but that's what has occurred. Each one of the unions has been contacted and are working with law and HR through a process of either standardizing on the way it should be done or negotiating changes in future contracts. So that's one way. The other way was just common changes. When we changed technology platforms, we had some errors, and we had to go back and clean those up. There are rounding changes that were made as part of the system. Previously, they were either rounded up by half an hour or rounded up by 15 minutes. They've standardized on rounding, and that's one thing you have seen change.
Okay, so would you say that we have now accomplished smoothing all those problems?
No.
Okay. Could you tell us when it's done?
I can tell you when that is done.
Thank
Yes. I don't want to say that it's gospel certain. We have had a payroll go through that was good, but I want to make sure and follow up with you.
I'm just aware of one particular example of a firefighter that was paid $2 for a pay period.
My own paycheck has been impacted as well. So,
And I would be less concerned if I heard that the errors had been made both for and against employees, but all I'm hearing, of course, is those that are against employees. I'm sure nobody's complaining to me when they get paid more than they expected.
we have had both. We have had both. But thank you. I will follow up with the council on that.
Any other questions on the finance? Yes, Councilperson Rabel.
Thank you. I know I had asked Brandon before about sales tax revenue. For the last year, we had budgeted a much lower percentage of sales tax revenue coming in. We weren't sure exactly how that was going to land. We were very conservative. But it seems like the sales tax revenue is coming in quite strong. How is that going to be impacting everybody's budget? If in any way, shape, or form. And I think when the budget presentation happened, it just made it seem like we're going to have a less of a big deficit hill as compared to what was already projected.
I think two things. One, we will bring back to you as part of a budget a full analysis of what was projected versus what was actual. And I don't have that here today. This was really to kind of get feedback. And so I will take your feedback that you would like to see exactly projection versus reality on tax dollars. And then how that will impact the budget. So I do not have that information today. Sherry may be able to.
I think Sherry did talk about it a little bit in her presentation or Brandon's presentation, but I think it's
Anyway,
just
yeah.
reduced our deficit that we would be facing as compared to what was previously
Good question.
forecasted.
Masks are wonderful, aren't they? Yes, Jane, we are continuing to collect sales tax in excess of projections. In the current budget, that just enhances our fund balances, and any decisions about how to appropriate and utilize that money in the future will be made in future budgets.
Okay. I do have one for David that he might know a little bit about. Your fund for the broadband, well, it's either broadband or fiber for leasing. What's that fund called? And,
Broadband Enterprise Fund?
okay. And that's, seems to be going up. Got another lease or two?
I will get you the exact balances. I think,
I'll ask Sherry. to
yeah,
give
on
us a-
December 1st, that fund was transferred from Public Works to IS to
Okay.
help manage it going forward. I do know that some of that fund dollars were invested in as part of the traffic system upgrade to get connectivity to all the traffic cabinets as part of the ALLO project. So I don't have the fund in front of me, but I will provide you that as part of the
Okay.
budget process. Okay? We have 5 slides on IT, so it'll be very quick if you guys are ready for that. What are we doing in IT? We're supporting the entire community. This is a new mission statement from last year, specifically looking at looping in the university, the state capitol. How do we do IT as a community? What do we have? A bunch of stuff. 450 miles of fiber, 2 data centers at the university up the street and the state capitol. That's where most of our head-end equipment is. 38 staff positions the same. Our job, not only to provide all of these new technology opportunities to the departments, to make sure we do it in a secure way. Many of you have read and reached out to me about the SolarWinds hack. This is big business right now. I think they estimated, the last I saw was over $300 billion in revenue from hackers this year. It's huge business. What have we been doing? This council approved a project to upgrade all of our servers, databases, and PCs to the latest standard. 18% of our 3,800 computers have been updated to that standard, 42% of our servers and databases. So we are ahead of schedule on the server and database side. I would say we're a little bit behind, but we're going through and physically touching every computer to make sure all drivers, all software, all applications are upgraded. So it is taking a little bit more time, but we still plan to have that project complete in June. We plan to have the server project completed in June of 2022. So we're a little bit further out on that project. One of the most important and effective tools is training. Many of you have reached out and watched the Security Mentor training videos. We're averaging about 78% across all city and county departments. All employees have sat through these videos. The number of links that get clicked through from fraudulent applications has gone down dramatically. I personally love it when the mayor sends me a message asking for me to send her a gift card to pay for lunch. And you'd be surprised at the number of people who accidentally click the link and then are embarrassed or afraid to notify us. The notifications have gone up. Hey, something happened, help me, right? And we just go in and immediately change their password and scan their computer. The educational benefits of this have been dramatic. And we appreciate your support. And we track down to the employee who has taken the training, what department they're in, and we'll continue to roll out new training as part of the next fiscal year. Short and sweet presentation on IT. Many of you have been involved with this for a number of years, so I'm happy to answer any questions you have there.
Yes, question?
David, thank you so much for this presentation. It's good to see this chart about training and how many employees have taken it. But do you have a plan for how to get the remaining 25% or so into, and I say this wondering if I've missed a class, but go ahead.
Generally speaking, opting in to training is the best method, right? We could at any time implement, you don't get to log in until you complete your training. That would be difficult, and that's not what we want to do. We want to be the provider of choice, not the internet police, right? There's two approaches we could take there. So right now, we meet with departments. We have a quarterly tech summit, if you want to call it that, and we talk with all of the tech leaders across the city. Our next phase of this operation is to go in to meet with each department and provide them a list and say, can you help us get carve out some time for these particular employees or this group of employees to do the training. Much like you, I would love to have 100%, but the only way to guarantee 100% is to shut off access if you don't do training, and that'd be challenging, right? And we don't want to go down that road, but we do have alternatives to bump that number up. We were very excited to see the number in the high 70s and 80s as far as each department.
I assume you'll gently explain to each of us if we're behind.
Sandra, I think you're behind. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just
We're
kidding.
all
I don't know.
Oh, Sandra can't possibly be behind.
I'm just kidding. I really am just kidding.
I haven't done any. I confess.
What I would encourage employees and our elected officials, the value is to us at work is great, but the value at home is even more. The training are 10 minutes long, 8 minutes long, something like that. Not very long at all. But they bring up the conversation in mind, and then you can have conversations with your loved ones about, hey, you know, have you seen this video, right? Or do you understand what this is, what phishing is? What are the little telltales to look for? I think that's really the value we don't talk about a lot, is that training really impacts a lot of people's lives.
Any other questions for David? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you very much.
We know where to find you.
And I'll turn it back over to John as soon as I mask up and get out of the way. But thank you.
Thanks, David.
kind of what we've got for you today. So I took notes. I know we have questions. I've flagged some stuff that needs to get answered, and I know the finance folks have been doing that too. Next week's President's Day, so no council, so no pre-council. But the next one up is Vibrant City Economy and Quality of Life. We'll have other departments to present on that too. So, anything else got missed or needs to be checked in on?
Any other questions? Thoughts? Okay. We can stand adjourned till 2 o'clock. Thank you.